Hello everyone, welcome to Genius Blossom. Today we are going to explore the respiratory system, an important part of the lesson, life processes from CBSE Class 10 Science. Life processes has many fascinating concepts, and in this video we will focus on understanding how respiratory system works to keep us alive and active.
In our last class, we learned how organisms obtain food through nutrition, but eating food is only the beginning. Our cells need to convert that food into energy to power every single life process. And do you know how this energy release happens? This energy release happens through a process called respiration. And respiration, it is the process by which food, mainly glucose, is broken down to release energy for life processes. And let us explore more about the process of respiration. All organisms don't use the same method for energy release. Some use oxygen to completely break down glucose into carbon dioxide and water. And this type of respiration is called aerobic respiration. Others follow pathways that do not require oxygen, and this is anaerobic respiration. So, in simple terms, aerobic respiration is the type of respiration that uses oxygen to break down glucose, while in anaerobic respiration, oxygen is not used. But no matter which pathway an organism uses, the very first step in the process of respiration, it is the same for all organisms. That is breaking down of glucose. Glucose, it is a 6-carbon sugar into pyruvate. Pyruvate is a 3-carbon molecule. And this step is same in all cases. And this reaction happens in the cytoplasm of the cell. So what is the first step of respiration? It is the breaking down of glucose into pyruvate. Glucose 6-carbon compound and pyruvate it is 3-carbon compound. In some organisms like yeast, pyruvate is converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide in the absence of oxygen, and this process is called fermentation. And as this process takes place in the absence of oxygen, this type of respiration is called anaerobic respiration. So what is fermentation? Fermentation is the process of breaking down of sugar or glucose without using oxygen to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide along with some energy. And as this process it is taking place in the absence of oxygen, fermentation is an example of anaerobic respiration. The breakdown of pyruvate using oxygen takes place in the mitochondria. In this process, each 3-carbon pyruvate molecule, it is broken down to give 3 molecules of carbon dioxide, and water is also produced here. And because this process, it occurs in the presence of oxygen, it is called aerobic respiration, and the energy released in aerobic respiration, it is much greater than in anaerobic respiration. Sometimes when there is a lack of oxygen in our muscles, another pathway is used for breaking down pyruvate. In this case, pyruvate is converted into lactic acid, which is also a 3-carbon molecule. And the buildup of lactic acid in our muscles during sudden or intense activity causes cramps. So remember, the first step of respiration is the conversion of glucose into pyruvate, and this takes place in the cytoplasm, and this step is same in all the different pathways. And when oxygen is available, this pyruvate it enters the mitochondria where it is fully broken down into carbon dioxide and water, releasing a large amount of energy, that is about 36 to 38 ATP molecules. But when oxygen is in short supply or there is lack of oxygen during intense exercise, pyruvate it is converted in the cytoplasm to lactic acid, releasing very little energy and sometimes causing muscle cramps. Then in the absence of oxygen, yeast and some microbes, they break down pyruvate in the cytoplasm to produce ethanol. Ethanol, it is a 2-carbon compound and carbon dioxide, and this also releases very little energy, that is 2 ATP molecules. The energy released during cellular respiration is instantly stored in a special molecule called the ATP. It is the cell's energy currency. Whenever the cell needs power for any activity, ATP is broken down to release a fixed amount of energy which drives the cell's endothermic reactions. Then what are endothermic reactions? Endothermic reactions are processes in the cell that require energy to proceed. For example, during photosynthesis, plants use energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose. Similarly, in our cells, building complex molecules like proteins from amino acids is also an endothermic reaction, and ATP provides the energy for it. ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, is the energy currency for most cellular processes, and the energy released during the process of respiration, it is used to make an ATP molecule from ADP and inorganic phosphate. ADP is adenosine diphosphate, and when an inorganic phosphate it is added to ADP, ATP molecule is formed, and the energy produced during respiration is stored in that ATP molecule. And now when the cell needs energy, it simply spends ATP by breaking its terminal phosphate bond using water, releasing 30.5 kilojoules per mole of energy. And just like a battery can power lights, motors, or gadgets, ATP can fuel muscle contractions, build proteins, and send nerve signals and run countless other activities inside our cells. And so it is the universal energy cache that keeps life running. Since aerobic respiration depends on oxygen, organisms must ensure that there is always enough oxygen available. In plants, gas exchange takes place through small openings called stomata, and large intercellular spaces make sure that air reaches every cell. Here, oxygen and carbon dioxide move in and out by diffusion, and the direction of this movement changes depending on environmental conditions and the needs of the plant. At night, when photosynthesis stops, the main gas exchange in plants is the elimination of carbon dioxide produced during respiration. During the day, however, the carbon dioxide generated by respiration it is quickly used up in photosynthesis, and as a result, there is no release of carbon dioxide. Instead, oxygen becomes the major event at this time. Animals have developed special organs to take in oxygen and remove the carbon dioxide they produce. For animals that live on land, that is terrestrial animals, breathing means taking in oxygen from the air around them. But for animals that live in water or for aquatic animals, they must extract oxygen that is dissolved in the water itself. The oxygen dissolved in water is much less than the oxygen present in air. That is why aquatic animals need to breathe much faster than land animals. Take fish for example. They draw water in through their mouth and push it over their gills where the dissolved oxygen is absorbed into their blood. Terrestrial organisms take in oxygen present in the air around them for respiration. Different animals have different organs to absorb this oxygen, and these organs are designed with a special feature, that is, their surface area is made as large as possible so that more oxygen can come in contact with them. This surface, however, is extremely thin and delicate because the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide happens here. To protect it, nature has placed it safely inside the body. Passages within the body carry air to this area, and a breathing mechanism moves the air in and out, ensuring that oxygen is absorbed and carbon dioxide is removed. When we breathe in, air first enters through our nostrils. Nostrils, it is the very first checkpoint in our respiratory system, and tiny nose hairs act like a natural filter, trapping dust and unwanted particles. A thin coating of mucus, it adds an extra layer of protection, catching even the smallest intrudes. And from here, the cleaned air travels through the throat and into the lungs. Along this path, rings of cartilage keep the airway firm and open, making sure every breath reaches its destination without obstruction. Deep inside our lungs, the airways branch out into tinier and tinier tubes, ending in millions of tiny balloons called alveoli. And these little balloons are magical and they give us the surface where oxygen and carbon dioxide can swap places, and their thin walls are wrapped in a rich network of blood vessels. And when we breathe in, our ribs lift up, the diaphragm flattens, and our chest cavity expands, pulling air deep into these alveoli. And here, oxygen from the air quickly slip into the blood, ready to be sent to every cell in our body, while carbon dioxide from the blood moves into the alveoli, waiting to be breathed out. When we breathe in, air rushes into our lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. At the same time, blood arriving here carries carbon dioxide from the rest of the body ready to be released. And oxygen from the fresh air quickly moves into the blood ready to travel every single cell. And here is something amazing, that even when we breathe out, our lungs never empty completely. This leftover air ensures that there is always enough time for oxygen to enter the blood and carbon dioxide to leave. That is, human respiration process starts when the air enters through the nostrils and tiny hairs and mucus trap dust and germs. The air then passes through the nasal cavity where it is warmed and moistened before moving down the pharynx, larynx and trachea. The trachea branches into two bronchi, each leading to a lung, which further divide into smaller bronchioles. And at the end of these are tiny balloon-like alveoli, and here oxygen passes into the blood and carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveoli to be exhaled. And even after breathing out, some air remains inside the lungs, and this residual volume keeps gas exchange going without pause. When animals are small, oxygen can reach their cells just by diffusion. But as the body size increases, diffusion alone is not enough to supply oxygen to every part, and that is when respiratory pigments become essential. In humans, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, a molecule with a very high affinity for oxygen, and it is found inside our red blood corpuscles. Hemoglobin picks up oxygen from the air in our lungs, carries it through the blood, and delivers it to tissues that need oxygen. But carbon dioxide behaves differently. It dissolves more easily in water than oxygen does. That is why most carbon dioxide in our body is transported in dissolved form in blood rather than attached to hemoglobin. The health of our respiratory system depends on clean air and healthy habits. One of the most harmful habits is using tobacco, whether smoked as cigars, cigarettes, BDs, hookahs, or chewed as gutka. It damages the lungs and also harms the tongue, heart, and liver. Smokeless tobacco too increases the risk of heart attacks, strokes, lung diseases, and cancers. In India, chewing gutka, it is a major cause of oral cancer. So protect your lungs and your life by avoiding tobacco in all its forms. That is, to stay healthy, just say no to tobacco and its products. Smoking is injurious to health, and it is not just a warning, it is a reality. Lung cancer, it is one of the leading causes of death across the world, and our respiratory tract has tiny hair-like structures called cilia. These cilia act like tiny cleaners, sweeping away dust, germs, and harmful particles from the air we breathe. But smoking damages and distorts these cilia. When that happens, dust, smoke, germs, and dangerous chemicals, they can freely enter the lungs. This makes us more prone to infections, persistent cough, and in the long run, even lung cancer. So every puff damages the very defense system meant to protect our lungs. Do you know that if you spread out all the alveoli in your lungs, they would cover an area of nearly 80 square meters? That is almost about the size of a badminton court. And this enormous alveolar surface makes gas exchange incredibly efficient. And imagine if oxygen had to reach your toes by simple diffusion, it would take about 3 years for a single molecule to get there from your lungs. Thankfully, nature gave us a much faster delivery system, that is the hemoglobin, the oxygen carrier in our blood. And now let us do a quick thought experiment. Imagine you take some freshly prepared lime water in a test tube and blow air into it. Very soon, what happens to the lime water? The lime water turns milky. Now take another test tube with the fresh lime water, but this time pass normal air through it using a syringe, and you will notice it takes much longer for the lime water to turn milky. What does this mean? It shows that the air we breathe out contains more carbon dioxide than air we breathe in. And here is another interesting activity. Take some fruit juice or sugar solution and add yeast to it. Put this mixture into a test tube, close it with a one-holed cork and attach a bent glass tube to the hole. Dip the free end of this tube into another test tube containing freshly prepared lime water. After some time, you will see the lime water turning milky. This tells us that during fermentation, yeast produces carbon dioxide as one of the byproducts.
Today we explored how our respiratory system works. If you found this class helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Genius Blossom so that you can watch the rest of the lesson and many other interesting topics. Thank you for watching. See you in the next class. Thank you.